Hello, and welcome to the Fear Channel, a channel with regular broadcasts telling the most chilling of urban legends, ghost stories, and forays into the darkest corners of the human mind. Those faint of heart or prone to night terrors should proceed at their own risk. Tonight's story is the strange and mysterious death of Edgar Allan Poe.
Edgar Allan Poe died on October 7th, 1849. In the more than 150 years since his death, little has risen that would shed light on the events that actually happened prior to that day. The circumstances leading up to it are uncertain, and the cause of death is often disputed. On October 3rd, Poe was found delirious on the streets of Baltimore, Maryland, in great distress and in need of immediate medical assistance, according to the man who found him, Joseph W. Walker. He was taken to the Washington College Hospital, where he died at 5 a.m. on Sunday, October 7th. Poe was never coherent enough to explain how he came to be in his condition. Poe was living in New York at the time, and was taking a trip down south to promote his most recent endeavor into starting up a magazine. It was on the return trip that events took a turn for the worse. On September 27th, 1849, Poe left Richmond, Virginia on his way home to New York. No reliable evidence exists about Poe's whereabouts until a week later on October 3rd, when he was found delirious on the streets of Baltimore, outside of Ryan's Tavern, sometimes referred to as Gunner's Hall. A printer named Joseph W. Walker sent a letter requesting help from acquaintance of Poe, Dr. Joseph E. Snodgrass. His letter reads, "Dear Sir, this is a gentleman, rather the worse for the wear, at Ryan's 4th Ward Polls, who goes under the name of Edgar Allan Poe, and who appears in great distress, and he says he is acquainted with you, and I assure you he is in need of immediate assistance. Yours in haste, Joseph W. Walker." Snodgrass's first-hand account describes Poe's appearance as repulsive, with unkempt hair, a haggard, unwashed face, and lusterless, vacant eyes. His clothing, Snodgrass said, which included a dirty shirt but no vest and unpolished shoes, was worn and did not fit well. Dr. John Joseph Moran, who is Poe's attending physician, gives his own detailed account of Poe's appearance that day. A stained, faded, old bombazine coat, pantaloons of a similar character, a pair of worn-out shoes run down at the heels, and an old straw hat. Poe was never coherent long enough to explain how he came to be in this condition, and it is believed the clothes he was wearing were not his own, most likely because Poe was known for his generally refined sense of taste, as well as a more refined choice in clothing. John Joseph Moran cared for Poe at Washington College Hospital. Poe was denied any visitors and was confined in a prison-like room with barred windows in a section of the building reserved for drunk people. Poe is said to have repeatedly called out the name Reynolds on the night before his death, though no one has ever been able to identify the person to whom he referred. One possibility is that he was recalling an encounter with Jeremiah N. Reynolds, a newspaper editor. Another possibility is Henry R. Reynolds, one of the judges overseeing the 4th Ward polls at Ryan's Tavern, who may have met Poe on Election Day. In Poe's distressed state, he made reference to a wife in Richmond. He may have been delusional, thinking that his wife Virginia was still alive, or he may have been referring to Sarah Elmira Royster, to whom he had recently proposed. He did not know what had happened to his trunk of belongings which, it transpired, had been left behind at the Swan Tavern in Richmond. Moran reported that Poe's final words were, "Lord, help my poor soul," before dying on October 7th, 1849. Sarah Elmira Royster was Poe's childhood sweetheart. During Poe's visit to the South to collect funds for his magazine endeavor, Poe met with her on a couple occasions before finally proposing to her. Royster recalled her last moments with Poe. "He came up to my house on the evening of the 26th of September to take leave of me. He was very sad and complained of being quite sick. I felt so wretched about him all of that night that I went up early the next morning to inquire after him, when, much to my regret, he had left in a boat for Baltimore." Before leaving, Poe stopped by the office of Dr. John F. Carter, at 7th and Broad Street at about 9:30 at night. After talking for a while, he went across the street to Sadler's restaurant for supper, mistakenly taking Dr. Carter's cane and leaving behind his own and a copy of Moore's Irish Rhapsodies. According to Dr. Carter, the cane contained a hidden sword, of which Poe may or may not have been aware. It is a possibility that Poe expected to be attacked on his return trip. Bishop Fitzgerald noticed that Poe left Richmond with as much as $1,500 gathered as subscription money for his magazine. This was an awful lot of money at the time. It is possible that this is an exaggeration, but it still means that Poe likely was traveling with a large sum of money on his person. This drastically increases the likelihood that Poe was mugged on his trip home. It has been speculated that Elmira Royster's brothers were involved in Poe's death, since they were vehemently opposed to his proposal. It has also been suggested that Poe was a victim of a practice known as cooping, since he was found outside a poll on election day. Cooping was a method of coercion where a gang of people would beat, threaten, or drug a person into voting for a candidate of their choice. His symptoms at death are also similar to those suffering from diseases like syphilis and rabies, so those are also potential causes. A more recent test done on one of Poe's hair follicles indicated that several poisonous heavy metals, including lead and mercury, were contaminating his body at the time of his death. We may never know what ill-fated events led to the death of one of America's greatest literary figures, but since the time of Poe's death, a mysterious cloaked figure has appeared at Poe's grave in Baltimore regularly since the 1930s, and only ending in 2010. The figure always wears dark black clothing, a wide-brimmed hat, and a white scarf, all of which help to obscure his face. The figure is called the Poe Toaster because he always pours a glass of cognac, raises his glass to the sky, and leaves behind the unfinished bottle at the gravesite. The toaster also leaves behind several roses in a specific arrangement, as well as a note.